Welcome to Frontrunners Innovate, where we connect you to global leaders meeting the world's challenges through business and innovation. Our guest for this episode is Myra Godfrey. She is the CEO of Jaya Myra PR. She's also the founder and board chairperson for Gita for the Masses, and both operations are headquartered in New York City. Myra's talent in the area of PR comes from organizing her own publicity upon authoring a book and performing a TEDx speech. Her passion project, which is largely what we'll talk about today, has to do with helping people overcome difficulties and negativity through sacred teachings and practices. Myra and I are joined today by co-host Alana Stott, founder and CEO of the Blue Rose Foundation, which is focused on helping the most vulnerable populations, but primarily fighting human trafficking. And Brooke Emery Scharfstein, owner of Be Unlimited Productions and co-founder of Joint Venture Consulting. Now I'm your host, Mary Keurig, CEO of Frontrunners Development, a global business development consultancy that connects businesses to change the world. And it's my pleasure right now to connect you to Myra, Alana, and Brooke. Let's do this. So here we are back with another episode of Frontrunners Innovate, and I have some wonderful, beautiful smiling faces here representing both the East and the West Coast today, so of the United States. As we are very global, I have to make that statement for sure. So I am going to start with my co-hosting panel today and let you get a chance to meet with them before we go to our guest. So Alana, why don't you share a little bit about your work, what you're doing there, because I know you have a new adventure yourself. And you can share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mary. And it's really quite fun actually, because normally when you ask me to introduce myself, we have to have like a big list of a million different things that's got going on. So I can now just officially say that I'm a founder and CEO of Blue Rose Foundation. So that's my newest venture. As you know, I've been working in the human trafficking field for a very long time, in the philanthropic field and the nonprofit consultancy, and it's just come to that time of setting up on my own now. So we've just recently set up the Blue Rose Foundation, so that is supporting vulnerable people in all walks of life, but mainly in human trafficking and child rescue and disaster response. So that comes from a long background of working in security for the last 15 plus years, working in philanthropy for 20 plus years, writing books and family. Normally there's a million different things, but I'm so happy to just talk about that now.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And Ms. Brooke, share with us what's going on with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So yeah, I basically do strategic partnership consulting, and I am a filmmaker and philanthropist, and I'm here to connect people to the divine and connect people to each other and raise consciousness on the planet and have a lot of fun. And I'm a mom to two beautiful daughters, and can't forget my dog child, Ryder. He's a golden retriever. He brings me joy every day.
You said dog child instead of fur baby. That was excellent. So that would lead us to you, Myra. So I have met Myra and then I re-met her. And this is interesting because the person that introduced me to Myra is the person you, Brooke, introduced to me. And that was Andy Grider.
I love it.
And, by the way, Andy's become like a brother to me, and we'll talk about that later. So thank you for that. But yeah, I think he's a brother to a lot of people, though. So Myra has, she's so impressed. And the funny thing is, Myra, since I told you that he brought up your name like 4 times to me, and I said, yes, Andy, I have met Myra. And then I thought I need to re-meet her because apparently I didn't get enough of Myra the first time. So I need to get reconnected. I thought there is something there. I know there is. He brought your name up again the other day. We're talking, have I introduced you? Yes, you have introduced me to Myra. I love her. She's awesome. I get it. We are going to do a podcast episode. He said, that's awesome. That's great. So this is terrific. He will be happy to know it is happening. But yes, you have made an impression on Mr. Grider, so we will allow you to make an impression upon us now. But I think what is the first impression you made upon him before we get to the really fun stuff is the PR side of you. So will you please share a little bit about that background and how you got into that work first?
Absolutely. I would say that I fell into that a little bit by accident because was an author, right? So when you're an author, how do you get your books out there? How do you advertise a TEDx talk? How do you let people know that, hey, I'm here to make the world a better place? And like you, Brooke, make it more conscious, more mindful, and just elevate humanity. So publicity is a huge part of that, right? I learned how to get really good publicity for myself. The woman who taught me how to do this had won 2 Emmys while she was producing the Oprah Winfrey Show. So I always say I learned from the best of the best. Learn from a TV producer, what producers look for, what writers look for. I've been into marketing for a very long time. But I love storytelling. I love helping people shape their brands and their narratives and then just get it out into the world. So I started PR by promoting my own work, my books, just getting out there myself. And then after the pandemic hit, it was actually in May of 2020, I decided to start doing this for other people as well. Because at that point, I was a regular national TV contributor. I had a recurring segment on Harry Connick Jr.'s daytime show. Like the day I put out the announcement to my network, I had 3 clients in 3 days, other author friends and people I knew. So we just really hit the ground running. And then over the last 4 years, that has grown into a lot bigger corporate clients, venture-backed companies, all companies that I feel are purpose-driven and making the world a better place. But it stemmed from my own passion and love for having to get myself out there, and also really bad experiences I had with other publicists. I mean, publicist was a bad word to me for a very long time, and I couldn't own that. I couldn't like put myself out there in that way. So I would say I'm a storyteller. I'm here to help you promote your work. And to this day, that is still what I do. I mean, I have to say, yes, I'm a publicist. We're a PR communications agency, but we really specialize in the media relations piece of it and getting people quality news coverage. So you can get on TV, radio, online, podcast, print, all the places. And that's something I'm passionate about doing, because I think people who are looking to make the world a better place need to have a platform for their voices and need to be getting out there just like everyone else is. And as you guys know, I'm certain working in this industry, if someone is on the news, it's not because they're the best and brightest. It's because they have someone getting them on those news segments. So I want to be that person who helps those truly amazing entrepreneurs and companies share their voice and their message.
Fantastic. I guess I knew that you had done a TED Talk, but it didn't really register on me until I saw the link to it somewhere. And I actually went on and listened to it and just loved the story that you were sharing. And did that come before or after the book, or tell me how that happened? And if you'll share a little bit about that experience and your message.
Absolutely. My TEDx talk came between both of my books. So my first book came out in 2015. Then the TEDx, and then the second book in 2021. That was a process. I applied. I knew a couple of people that had spoken at that particular TEDx event. It was the TEDx Wilmington Woman event in Wilmington, Delaware, and they had had a great experience with it. So I put in an application, went through that whole process. To give a 10-minute talk, it's about 75 hours of preparation.
Alana knows that.
Speaker coaches, working with like the right people to get your message right. And media training, when I work with clients, is the same way. When you want to get a message across in a smaller time frame, it takes more training than if you have an hour long to talk about something. So it was very impactful for me to learn how to build an arc of a story and reach up to this climactic aha moment, and then bring people kind of back down from that, feeling like they had gotten something very valuable and useful out of the talk, like hooking someone right from moment number one, and then just building up to this story and like, wow, and then letting them go at the end of it. So I think anyone who wants to get their message out there should definitely consider a TEDx talk, just for the experience that it's going to give them, not even for sharing the message with the world, but you're going to learn so much about yourself in that process and how to actually tell your story and your narrative in a way that's understandable to other people.
I've heard different people say different things about their experience about that. I think, Alana, you were invited to do a TEDx, right, at one point?
Yeah, I was asked to do a TEDx on human trafficking, and I guess they just weren't really ready for what I had to say.
I can understand that.
And this is an interesting question I had about something you were saying earlier, because the one thing that me and my husband, we're from the UK, he's English, I'm Scottish. Authenticity is kind of is not just bred into you, it's forced into you. When you come to America, like obviously you guys are still authentic, but you could just be that little bit louder on how you project yourself. You know, as Brits, we're kind of told to sit down, like be quiet, like not talk big about yourself. And that was something that we as kids we were always told that kind of way. So coming to America, we almost had to learn how to just shout a little bit louder and say things in a different way. And we struggle with that with things like social media and things, you know, we're not really into like just putting anything, any old stuff out there. Everything that we do has like an authentic approach to it. So when we published our books, I've done 3 kids' books, a business book, a memoirs, he's done a memoirs. It wasn't as easy to get the books out as we thought because, and one of the reasons I never got a traditional publisher was my following. I didn't have a big enough following. My husband did get a traditional publishing, but again, the marketing and the media side of it was something that we struggled to get to do. So my question was going to be, how do you get that balance right of authenticity and still being yourself and being loud enough to be needed to be seen, I guess?
For me, I think it comes down to self-confidence and clarity and purpose rolled into one. I am very clear on what my purpose is. And in order to execute and to live that, I have to really put myself out into the world. And I had to grow comfortable doing that. I used to call myself the queen introvert nowadays, and people would not necessarily know that because I'm very comfortable giving media interviews and putting myself out there, but I am still introverted. I need my alone time to like recharge, just me and Netflix, you know, and I'm good for hours or a couple days at a time. But I do love it when I'm able to put my message out there. I get energized from that as well, not from like being around the crowd, but from sharing my message. So I think you do have to learn to be very loud and proud about what you're doing. Because one of the things I learned very early on in this game was that people don't care about your organization or your work. They want to know who you are. Like you're the face of it. You're the spokesperson. Exactly. And build that rapport with you. They don't build the rapport with your brand. They need to know you, like you, and trust you. And if you're not putting yourself out there in a confident and bold and friendly, charismatic way, it's really hard for people to be like, yeah, I know that organization. I know that person, and I really resonate with them. Like we can resonate with causes, but everyone wants to know who is that face behind the cause. So I tried for a long time. I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put myself out there. I'm just promoting my work. Failed spectacularly. Once I started promoting myself a little bit more, I grew a larger social following. I did a lot on Twitter previously before it turned into X and what it is now. And I had not like a huge following, you know, probably close to like 50,000 followers on there and 15,000 or so on Instagram. But yeah, but none of that happened until I was ready to really put myself out there and start talking about me and what I'm passionate about. It was just it was a very hard lesson. And then I started getting comfortable with that because I am super passionate about sharing consciousness and making the world a better place. And if that means that people need to know more about me, I am now perfectly okay with that. But Alana, like you were saying, if you've grown up in a culture and a society that tells you not to do that, I can only imagine how challenging it is to consciously like redirect that energy in a way to say, yes, this is okay. And yes, this is something I'm going to do. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge you for taking on clients that you believe in. I started my career out in publicity, entertainment publicity, and there were a lot of clients that were thrown upon me that I had to promote, and I successfully got them on media channels that, you know, I was good at what I did, but I didn't feel good about it at the end of the day. And it was very conditional. Like, you got me a page in the Times. Why didn't you get me 5 pages in the Times?
Oh, gosh.
You know, it's a very conditional business. I'm grateful for you that you are in a position to do that kind of work in a very conscious way. And you talked about that you're passionate about, you know, raising consciousness and making the world a better place. And so I would love to know, like what's next for you? Like what's the plan for that? I would love to know, like
segue. Thank you.
I've read about it, but I would love, since people are just listening and I'm excited about what you're doing, but I'd love for you to share with all of us so that we can dive into that, you know, and then help amplify that seed that's being planted, because I know that we're all intentional in that way, and hopefully that also, you know, then then eventually we can just say, remember there was a blue rose not for profit one day? Like it's like almost in the past. It's like, yeah, remember?
Exactly. That is a wonderful question, Brooke. And I love how you said, what is next for you? So I'm going to bring this full circle. This is where I started. I founded my nonprofit organization back in 2010, so a long time ago. And I quickly learned that I wanted to take a back seat for a little while and start to really look at the problems that I was seeing within other communities and spiritual organizations and how to not replicate a lot of the same mistakes that I was seeing. Because what I was seeing come out of most all of them were these huge, tremendous egos. And I couldn't stand that. And I said, I will absolutely not put myself or message or teachings out there in a way which is just going to glorify someone's ego. And in my opinion, make them a bigger hypocrite, less spiritual, bigger hypocrite, thinking that they know something, but aren't actually able to live the practice and embody it in the heart. So I took a step back for a long time, and my inner guidance and prayer and meditation really guided me to focus on the other aspects of my life, like growing my brand and writing my books and doing the TEDx talk and starting a business and becoming very financially secure out here on the East Coast. Because as anyone who's been in New York knows, this city is no joke. No joke when it comes to rent or just like being able to be here and not just survive, but thrive. That was very different for me, because when I went through this big transition in my life, like part of my backstory, you know, the less than 30 seconds, I started my career as a research scientist. I was making big changes in my life at that time, and becoming diagnosed with fibromyalgia was a huge part of that for me. And it was like the transition out of all of that. But that also meant that there was a couple of years that I wasn't working or doing anything because I was like physically incapacitated. Western medicine just made everything worse. So I walked away and said, let's screw this and go find a way to heal naturally. And that's exactly what I did, mostly with mindfulness and meditation, therapy, just some like inner consciousness based work. And then I took my life in this entirely different direction. And that's like when I was motivated to start the nonprofit and help other people do these things. But then I took that back seat for a while. And then it was about last summer, it hit me nearly out of the blue. It said, now is the time. You need to start waking this up again. You've done all the other things. You've put all the ducks in a row, so to speak. And now is really the time to get this out there. The people need it, especially in New York City. There's so much stress and worry and anxiety and loneliness in particular here in this city. It's just the time and the place now. And I feel like I'd finally gotten enough of an education on how do we overcome those very common pitfalls. And a lot of it is because people just get teachings, but then they don't live it. So part of what I want to do is it's experiential teaching, and also teaching and techniques that help people to understand that there's no one way of reaching some grand ultimate truth, but you are going to be much more successful at meditating quickly and easily, or finding modalities that work for you if you work to your individual constitution and type. Just like in Ayurveda, they have doshas and elements. You don't have to apply that just to physical health. You can apply it to your psychological and emotional temperament to learn how to meditate effectively. And why there's other spiritual teachers not teaching this, I don't understand, but it's very pivotal and like a cornerstone bedrock to my messaging, is that you have to embrace and honor your uniqueness and your purpose and know what makes you uniquely you, and find the techniques and the modalities and the tools that are going to really resonate with you. So because it's like such an experiential based teaching, you can't just take it in intellectually and think you know something, and you can't also just go give the same thing to someone else and expect it to work for them. So it requires a lot deeper of a dive. Now, while some of the teachings, of course, are a little bit more universal, there's just that component of understand your uniqueness, what makes you you, what makes you tick, and finding your purpose and finding like how to like really bring your heart out and how to empower these things and how to fill in your weaknesses. So I'm more focused on people understanding that divinity consciousness is inside of them, and what do we need to do to wake it up inside of us. I'm not at all concerned about people worshiping an externalized God or goddess at all. Worship and becoming are different things. And I think that becoming strongly, it's like love, but it's self-love. And it's learning how to accept love from other people. And it's learning how to give love into the world. And it's learning how to be responsive and not reactive. And really just that conscious character development piece of like making yourself the best version of you so that you can fulfill your purpose and be happy and put yourself out there and give and receive. So I'm just trying to shift the focus a little bit on a lot of consciousness teachings, bring it back to how do you actually embody and live this? Because if you are living your purpose, you're going to be making a tremendous difference and impact in the world with what you're doing. And that's ultimately, I think it's the only way to really be fulfilled. And so many people nowadays are just not happy or fulfilled. And I want to change that. I want to show people that we all have a purpose. We've all got our unique strengths and talents and gifts. And there's so much that you can do. There's so much that you can do to make the world a better place. Even if you just take that one grain of sand of knowledge, you know, you can change the entire world. Like you don't have to know everything. You just have to take those few little grains, give them back, you know, as a sacred gift into the world, and you will make a difference and you're going to feel a lot better about it. So that's really what I think my work and my mission is just helping people to, how do you overcome those basic problems? Like, how do you develop confidence and charisma and radiance, and what are the basis of these things? And how do you actually wake up divinity inside of you? Like, how do you use your body as a temple of God, so to speak? And how do you radiate that out so that you are able to motivate and inspire other people? That's what I am super passionate about doing. And I think that this has so many profound implications in so many ways. It helps entrepreneurs like to be more focused and clear and impactful and make better decisions. Anyone who has ever faced trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse, these teachings, these practices really help to heal that in a deeper way. I endured a lot of that trauma myself as a child. And so I know how difficult it is. And I know how few people really overcome it. So for people who've been like through these really traumatic situations, like they need a way to like deeply heal mind, body, and soul. And so I want to be able to share and just put this stuff out in the world to make it a better place. And healed people helped heal other people, hurt people hurt people. Let's minimize the hurt people and helping people find what they need to actually heal and move forward.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you have a plan for a framework for how to move this forward to the world. So you want to share just a little bit about that?
I do. So currently fundraising for the nonprofit organization. We are under a 501c3 umbrella, so we're already a tax exempt charity. What I'm looking to do is to launch our headquarters here in New York City, which would be in the form of like a small center, but that would just serve as essentially a launch pad for global initiatives and teachings to happen everywhere. A place that we have the right technology and everything set up to be able to broadcast globally and do remote things, but also to have this just be that coalescing point and to serve as the launch pad to literally like travel and teach in other parts of the world.
Any questions, ladies?
Yeah,
yes, I want all the questions.
What you were saying about ego and the nonprofit side of it, and to bring it all back, that was one of the biggest things I had an issue with when doing nonprofit consultancy. Whatever the problem they were trying to solve, if it's childhood cancer, if it's mental health, if it's sexual trauma, any of these things, I used to be able to bring these people together and I would say, here's the solution. This is what we're going to do. And this is how, okay, we need $500,000. I can get you $500,000, but you've got to work with this person and you might not get the glory at the end of it. And people would literally turn it down because they wanted that shot at the end. They wanted the hero shot. They wanted these. And I would find that the biggest issue I would have with nonprofits was the ego side of it. And then I started working with a nonprofit last year to help them fundraise. And it was actually the opposite. And I was like, this guy, this CEO, has got zero ego and he doesn't believe in himself and he's not, he's here for the cause, but he's not really reaching out. Mm-hmm. So and his nonprofit was bringing plant medicine to veterans. And when I was working with him, I was realizing that he knew exactly what it could do. He knew exactly what he just wasn't believing fully in himself, that he was asking for this funds and what he was doing. So we had to do so much inner work with him, which was crazy because he'd done a lot of the medicine work himself to get through his own traumas, but then we were bringing him to the next level of business. And then working with them, I was realizing that actually, what they were offering was, let's say it's a 12-week program. And in that 12-week program, there's maybe 6 hours of plant medicine. And what he was doing is he was focusing on that 6 hours. So he was going out to get funding and saying, okay, it might be slightly illegal and it might be this kind of the thing. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. First of all, it's not illegal because you're doing it in countries that it is legalized. The actual work that you're doing is all this other stuff, is all this integration work, is all this preparation work, the breath work, everything else that you're doing. Yes, the medicines, the modalities kind of helping a little bit, especially within the trauma side of it. But when it's all reaching out, so I almost had to his ego was so far gone, I had to kind of bring it back a little bit.
I understand that completely. And I think that people having ego is extraordinarily healthy. You need it to be successful, but it crosses a line when it turns into egoism, which I think is just ego just for the sake of making yourself big and grandiose, which is trying to compensate for some insecurity somewhere else. Like if you're truly confident, I don't think that truly confident people have big raging egos. But like you said, if someone doesn't have enough confidence, then there's also that fear, intimidation, and putting themselves out there, or imposter syndrome, or what. People are always going to be on one of those two sides of the spectrum until you learn to harmonize and come into balance. I much prefer the word harmony to balance, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, you're either going to see people, I think, have big raging egos and egoism, or they're going to lack the confidence to find that unique hybrid of friendly, approachable, really wanting to make change, and having enough of voice and putting themselves out there. It's rarer to find, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. Like you said, you were elevating him to the next level. And whenever we do in business, whenever we are dealing with money, that always brings out a whole other can of worms to show you about yourself, so to speak.
Yeah.
Brooke, you're on mute.
Yeah, I really loved what you said about how in New York it does cost a lot of money. You could sneeze and spend like $500, like just for sneezing. But I do agree with you that as a people, as a human race, we are lonelier than ever. Like we're more connected than we ever been through social media and I was just having this conversation earlier about how being present is very difficult, and that, the fact that, you're starting with an in-person center and then really taking the approach that it's not cookie cutter, because I do think I think that the personal development world is definitely trying, but yes, there is the shadow side where people buy their own publicity and aren't walking the walk. And I think that if they aren't walking the walk, if they could just own that they're in the curriculum with you versus having some sort of specialness. And I love how Ram Dass talks about it as like not moving towards attraction or chasing aversion, and embracing that divinity that you're speaking of is so beautiful. So I would love, and I think I mentioned that it isn't cookie cutter, because like someone has these 7 steps and that person's like, I'm going to do those 7 steps. And then they're making themselves feel bad that those 7 steps didn't work for them. It didn't mean that it didn't work. It just maybe wasn't right for their design, like you spoke of. So I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper about like how you help people like unlock their own curriculum for their divinity.
Yes, I can definitely do that. And like you said, cookie cutter approaches, I don't believe work. And everyone has a different start point and end point. The very funny thing is your start point and your end point are the exact same places. You come full circle, and maybe you're starting here and someone else is starting here and someone else is starting here. So you can't take the same journey at the same time, but it's not linear. Like you're going from here to here. You're literally going to come back to where you start from and have that aha. I'm no different.
May not be 1, 2, 3, maybe 1, 3, 2. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I just had that pointed out to me.
I'm a little bit synesthetic and I see connections in all sorts of different places. And I see colors and taste colors and, you know, things like that. So I think I see some connections that maybe are not just as evident to other people. But one of the things I realized pretty early on, and I really believe from the things that I have been taught from Eastern spiritual traditions, meditation and mindfulness and yoga, is that we all do have a causal seed and a purpose for being here. And I really fundamentally believe it is your purpose for being here, which actually gave you everything else about you. So your physical body type, your temperament, your elemental composition, all of that was determined from your purpose. So you can use all of those things to backtrack and help you find your purpose as well. So if you understand like what your elemental composition is, let's say I am very strong in earth, fire, and ether or space element. So what this means for me, fire relates to willpower and focus and vision and sight. So when I was learning to meditate, I started with two different techniques. One was a visualization-based technique where we did this visualization chanting at first. And that worked so well for me. It just resonated with me. I got it. I was able to stick with that. I'm like, I love this. The other was a breath-based technique. Breath-based techniques have a lot to do with air element, which I have practically none of in my elemental constitution. Now, let me tell you, I hated that and I treated it like the plague. And if it was the only technique I had was ever given, I would have walked away from the spiritual path like before it even started. And I would have been convinced, oh, I can't meditate. I can't do this because it made me feel horrible about me. Yes. But then the visualization-based things, the mantra-based things, those resonated so strongly like with my elemental composition. I was able to latch onto those things, leverage them, and make tremendous change quickly. At that point in my life, I suffered from anxiety and depression, and I was just miserable with everything. Within 6 months of daily meditation, I no longer had to take anti-anxiety medicine ever again, and I never had a panic attack ever again. But it was thanks to that visualization-based technique, not the one that required me to do the breath work that I literally hated with a passion and eventually just stopped doing. But it just goes to show you, if people tell you this is the way to do it or this is the right way, it can make you feel so bad about you. But if God is in each and every one of us, why would you ever feel bad about you? You just have to unlock what it is that's making you special and unique and what works for you, because there is a way that works for everyone to do anything you want to do. You just have to hone in onto those things. So I find by breaking it down to the 5 elements that we're able to do that. I don't use Ayurvedic doshas because it helps in physical, but it doesn't help with psychological and emotional temperament because they're in the form of the 3 doshas, not 5 elements. And there's just too much overlap. Kapha dosha, for example, has earth and water element. Earth and water are as opposite as you can get in terms of your emotions and your temperament. Earth is rigid and inflexible, and water is very fluid and flowing and tends to take on the shape of its container. So they're going to make you vastly different types of people that are going to gravitate to different things, have different strengths, have different weaknesses. So I can usually look at people and tell a little bit about what their composition is or their primary elements and help them to get a grasp. But it's almost uncanny because the stuff, it's just so spot on. When you hone into someone, you can definitely find things that make them feel empowered. And I think that that's the key to lasting success. Because if you want to make change, you got to be consistent with whatever you're doing. And if you don't stay consistent, you're not going to rewire those neural connections in your brain and actually make that long-term change. So you have to make people feel motivated and empowered and inspired. Otherwise, it's just like game over. It's ended before you've even begun. And that's what I see happening in most every spiritual community is these rigid tools and techniques and teachings, and they want you to mold to their box. And I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm saying like, no, I'm going to teach you to mold to you.
Yeah. It's not like these 3 steps, follow this and you're good to go, like a boxed program. Yeah.
Exactly. We teach people like how to find what works for them and then an understanding of how to work with techniques and build things that are going to work like for their unique constitution.
Yeah. I tried the breath work myself too. I ended up not sticking with it. It just wasn't me, but I do understand it. And I do like some of the results I get. It's just, it's not me. So I get it. I do get what you're saying. You'll only stick with what it is that is you, and that is you is what's going to make the difference. And so you have to assume, pull in what it is that works for you. I told you about the energy work that I've been doing with the Mind Valley work. The funny thing is I'm taking 2 classes there. One of them is working for me, the other one isn't. And I don't know that I'm going to drop the other one, but it's 2 different styles. And I'm a visual person. I like to visually learn. I can hear things. Yeah, so I'm a creative type, and I like colors, you can see. So, and all of that. And the funny thing is, it's the guy with the energy work is very good at helping you visualize things. He helps you visualize where you are. You go to that little room in your head, decorate it the way you want it. I'm like, decoration? I could decorate that room in my head. He said, make it yours. First, he tells you to clean it out first. And so when I first went into the room in my head, it's like behind you, Myra, is all those books. I had floor to ceiling albums like that with all my junk in it. So I had to clear that room out, in my emotional and, whatever, everything. So I had to clear it out before I could decorate it. So there was that. But I mean, he uses visualization a lot. And the other class person who is very well known, I mean, he's like world famous. I've heard about him forever. It's just not resonating. So you're right. It does. And the funny thing is I'm advancing with the energy stuff, ramping through that. I'm way behind on the other. It's just not motivating me. It's not pulling
exactly.
me.
Exactly. And if we're not motivated, we're not going to move ahead. I think you'd probably love breath work sort of things. Like I can tell you have a lot of air element in your constitution, which also that spoke to me when you said you're cold all the time. That's very common for people that have a lot of air element, is that ability to like heat up the body, but air also like relates to breath work and sense of touch. So like physical contact, touch, and working with the breath would probably be things that would work really well for you.
Well, Alana, didn't you do all of the security work with the very physical stuff, right? The training and all, Alana, that you had to do.
Yeah, I did. But I would say that for everything that I've ever done, and any training that I've ever done, and any work I've ever done, I've 99.9% got out of most situations with my words. So I've rarely had to actually use the physical. But I was thinking, like, when you're thinking about your purpose, when I was at school, we went to, I lived in kind of a ghetto style area, but went to a private school. My mum had got me in and I got a scholarship to the school. But when we would leave the school grounds, they were surrounded by the kind of not so nicer schools who all hated us because we went to this other school. So kids would always want to go out with me at lunchtime, so because they felt safe beside me. But I wasn't a physical fighter, but there was just something about me that people would not want to come and challenge.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know why that is, and it's always kind of stuck with me that people rarely will get into. I've obviously there's been instances when people have hurt me in my life, and usually males, but I've never been in like a one-on-one like fight that's actually got to. But I was actually going to ask, because you were speaking about embracing the divinity, and I was thinking about, once you start really finding who you are and finding your purpose and believing in yourself and loving yourself, especially when you've been through sexual traumas and things like that, and you can start to love who you are and love your body and love everything about you, there comes a time in a lot of people's life, and I've seen this in a lot of people that are healing, that they realize that other people in their life are not serving them, and that they've maybe been holding on to this toxic energy that's been harming them. What advice do you give to people that when they get to that stage of healing, that they realize some people need to be released?
Yes, absolutely. That as your vibrational frequency changes and you grow and you heal, some people are just going to remove themselves from your life just because they're no longer in alignment with you. And when you learn those lessons, you don't need them to be that mirror to try and show you that. And then you are okay with releasing them. Or sometimes it happens just rather forcefully. Like when I started to come onto my spiritual path, I think I lost everyone in my friend circle. I mean, it even led to me getting a divorce because my ex-husband just said, it's just like you've changed. You're not you. It's like you don't love me anymore. I'm like, I feel the exact same way about you. The only difference is I'm learning to love myself. and couldn't handle that. Yeah. So people will definitely go out of your life as you're growing and healing. And I think that that's just the evidence and the proof that some people need to see that, hey, I'm actually growing and evolving and changing, and this is a good thing. But it can be really challenging too, because as we've said, in New York, it's a very lonely place, and it's hard to make authentic connections with people sometimes, but it is a necessary part of the process. Because especially if you're healing from trauma, sexual abuse, the last thing you want to do is keep those people around if you're outgrowing them, or the types of people that allow that negative energy or negative self-talk to be perpetuated in your life.
Yeah. And I feel that when I'm working with a lot of that group of people, that many of the time they've attached themselves to people that almost reaffirm that victimhood or that pain, or
Yes.
and then once you start to heal, I think it's actually, I don't want to be that person anymore, and you're kind of still keeping me as that person, so we need to let go. I think that's really hard for a lot of people to actually say, I don't need you in my life. And that could be friends, family, husbands, it's a group of people.
It can be very hard. And it's so interesting that you say that too. That reminds me, many people ask me, well, why don't you teach to the fibromyalgia community since you overcame it? And I never have from day one, because I never owned that label. I never adopted that label. From the day of diagnosis, it was like, nope, this is temporary. I'm not
It's not staying with me. I'm not claiming it.
Unsubscribe.
And how can I work with a bunch of people who are owning a diagnosis? You're basically clinging to it and saying, this is mine. Now, how do I get rid of you? Well, you gotta like let it go. It's like I was already so out of alignment with that. It's like it's very hard to communicate with people who have been victimized and don't want to come out of that just want to stay in that place of being a victim. It's like, how am I supposed to teach you or guide you if you don't want to grow or evolve? Because everything that I'm going to teach people is about stepping out of that and stepping into your power and reclaiming your power and your divinity, which is just like explosive light and beauty inside of you. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you're going to find a lot of people who have gone through those communities who really do want to find their light and brilliance too. And, I'm sure that's why you're doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Brooke, did you have something to say? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question that for people listening. You mentioned the different elements. And if someone's listening and they're like, I don't live in New York, but I want to know what my elementals are. And, is it the type of thing where it's just like they need to have a session with you and you're like, I know what you're like, what is the process for someone to go and discover their own elements so they can start, while they're saving up or planning their trip to New York to visit the center?
I've made it very easy for people. That is what the topic of my first book is about: identifying your elemental type, identifying your guna type. And then there's a whole second section of just different techniques that work like for different types. And so It's meant to help you do that. That book is Vibrational Healing, Attain Balance and Wholeness, Understand Your Energetic Type. Hey, to be honest, I won't even do one-on-one sessions with people if they haven't read the book and dived into the elemental stuff. Because I'm like, why are you going to come and spend your money like working with me if you haven't already done this work? Because I'm just going to go back and like tell you to go and do this work and
read it anyway.
These quizzes, like to get like the basic understanding. It's like, yeah, you don't have to read the book, but I'm going to make you go through this quiz anyway. So you're going to save a lot of time if you do this in advance. And then you come to me with questions and I can help you fine tune. I'm very big about empowerment. For me, I run a PR and communications agency. That's how I make my money. And I'm not opposed to making money by helping people understand themselves, but I'm also not a fan of wasting people's time or money. So it's like, go read the books, get an understanding, follow some stuff like that I put out on social media, just like have a basic understanding. And then I am more than happy to help you clarify something or do some one-on-one work with you. But you need to have a little bit of an idea. Like, don't come to me and just say, hey, what is
me?
I'm not the right person.
Self-invest.
The right person.
Yeah.
I'm not the all love and light person or something like Amici that's just going to give you a big hug and tell you life is going to be okay. I'm on the other side of like the school of hard knocks teacher that says you need to do the work and take accountability and take responsibility. And if you do these things, you can become radiant and spectacular and happy and fulfilled and get just about anything that you truly deeply desire from your heart. It's not what your ego wants, but your heart wants.
What's meant to be.
But the only path to that is through authenticity and doing the work. So people who want to come work with me, they got to be ready to do work.
I love that.
Do you work with, and I would ask because I had an interesting conversation about the other day, we all kind of work in the field of trying to heal people and going that have been through, whether veterans or trafficking or all these things. But I was speaking to someone that's doing a lot of work with children, and not children that have been abused, just children in their life, trying to stop these things even happening and just living a life that isn't full of trauma, because it almost feels a bit strange to say that someone would grow up in a world with no trauma, but they're actually working with kids who are doing okay, and then we're just going to make sure life is going to be okay for them because they're going to have all these tools that they can use, and using things like breath work and yoga and whatever it might be at a very early age to give them that healing that we all get, but before they've even started, they don't need to be healed. Do you work with children as well?
I have not done one-on-one work with children, and part of the reason was that one of the spiritual teachers I had studied from was very adamant about saying a child, it's fine, but they need to consciously choose this. You cannot force these things on people because it's not going to have the same profound effect as it does for someone who consciously chooses this and wants to learn these techniques. And honestly, it's the trauma and the negative things that we experience in life that actually catapults you to the other side of, I think, wanting to be a good and compassionate and loving person and make change. Usually the people who haven't suffered through some kind of pain or adversity, they kind of just stay in that middle zone of being okay, but don't go out to make a profound difference or don't have a desire to do that, because usually that strong desire comes from the fact that someone has hurt you. And this is like your way of coming back into balance and healing. I don't think we're going to get to a world within the next 200 or 300 years that people are going to grow up without trauma in their life. But I think it's wonderful to give children and younger people the resources, like if they want it and they're ready to adopt it, and they can have to light stream and visualize and meditate and breathe and have like coping tools and mechanism. Absolutely. I am all for that. But I have not like personally like worked with people say under 14.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the other spectrum to questioning, because this was part of the same conversation, but do you ever work with you work with trauma and things, do you ever work with perpetrators that have caused the traumas? And we've done some work with, I've done some work with pedophiles, I've done some work with traffickers, and it's I was speaking to someone who absolutely can't do it. She was like, I cannot do that, not at all. And then I was speaking with someone that fully does that. Their nonprofit is doing that, bringing perpetrators and survivors together. Have you ever done anything like that?
I will work with anyone that wants to work with me. I don't hold judgment or labels on these people. And if they're coming and wanting to do the work, that means that something about them wants to change. And hopefully the tools and techniques will be able to help them do that. I fully believe that when you're tapping into who you truly are, anything is possible. So I think that anyone can be healed, anyone can change, but it matters how much work do they want to put into that. I think a lot of the people that we face and just come into contact with on a daily basis anyway, like they're there to show you your wounds and triggers. Like we're not coming into contact with fully healed, immaculate human beings, especially romantic relationships. Those are usually huge lessons. That
a lot of ragged edges.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Yeah, and when you're like, do you work with perpetrators? And I'm like, let me think about people I've dated and what spectrum do they fall into, or
define perpetrator.
not making the world a better place. I'm like, yeah, but those are the people that like, that's who like needs these teachings. It's just about accountability and responsibility. If someone wants to take accountability, absolutely. Like the big sinners can turn into the biggest saints and the people with the biggest hearts. Yeah, I'm happy to work with anyone that I think genuinely has a good heart and wants to grow and change.
Great. We've got to end this up, ladies. This has been terrific. And I think we could probably go for another hour because there's been questions that I think still need to be asked. But this has been terrific. And I thank you so much, Myra. We covered everything, almost everything, anyway, not everything, but almost everything from both ends of the spectrum of you. And I know there's a lot more in between. There's a middle to your sandwich, I think, that we didn't get to. But
the middle we didn't talk about is all the dancing, right?
Oh, there you go. Alana and Brooke, thank you so much. You're a great co-host. And Brooke, it's always good to see you. I get to see Alana probably more often than I get to see you for sure, but it's nice to see you. And Alana, always a pleasure. Myra, terrific. I will let you ladies know when this is ready to go. And Myra, I think I've got a headshot on you, but if I don't, make sure I have a current one, please. And Brooke, I don't think I have one on you. At least
I'll send you one.
Please do. Okay. Alana, I've got one on you. So, all right. Thank
you,
ladies.
so much. It was wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Appreciate you guys so much.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.